Hello, so in today's video I want to share with you 5 ways you can cut IT costs. Again, I have a nice cheat sheet for this and I will link to that in the comments. Way number 1, audit what you're using, what you've got. If you audit your software licenses, you will find there's lots of stuff you're paying for and not using. You'll find you're possibly paying for licenses for people that have left. If you don't have a good change management process, moves and levers process even. You need a good movers and change process. So when people leave the organization or change roles or they join, you give them the right licenses. When they're not using that software anymore or they leave, then you take those licenses away and you don't keep paying for them for 2 years after they've left. Way number 2 to cut costs. I've got a list here. I will show it to you if I can find it. So once we've audited the software that we've got that we don't need, I think the second thing that I should really point out is you need to be prioritizing cybersecurity. Most small businesses do not understand the risk involved with a cyber incident. You're talking potentially millions of pounds of cost to recover your IT systems. If you're a small business, it may exceed your business's annual revenue. You need to be investing in cybersecurity. I recommend a budget of around £30, euros, whatever, per user per month as a starting point. If you're investing £1 or less per user per month, you will have a cyber incident. I can almost guarantee it. I know a lot of people say to me, it has never to me, we're all fine, we've got antivirus. It's not good enough. You need to be investing. The costs are going up and up and up and up, and you need cyber insurance. Okay, then the third thing rather we're going to look at, the next thing we're going to look at is addressing technical debt. So once you've audited your software licenses and you're not paying for stuff you're not using anymore, what we want to do is make sure we understand the equipment that we have, the systems that we're using, and when they are due to be refreshed or replaced. We call this in IT life cycle management. It's very exciting. What it means is if you buy a laptop, you spent the money, it's done. How long is it you're going to need to replace that machine again? And depending on what you get, I always recommend business grade devices and what the person's doing with it. Usually around 4 years is a realistic life cycle, not 10, not a year. Plan it out, set the budget aside so you know what you're doing, because all you're doing otherwise is you're sweating your IT assets, which is okay, but then you're spending that money on staff, and the staff are much more expensive than the infrastructure assets. And don't forget about your switches, your routers, your cabling. All of these have a life cycle. Obviously structured cabling doesn't need to be replaced very often, but it still reaches end of life. And a lot of businesses try and cut costs here. It's a mistake. If you want to extend the life of something, there are downsides to doing that. Imagine you buy a 15-year-old car and try and do 100,000 miles a year in it. What's going to happen? You're going to spend a lot of time waiting for the AA truck to come out to help you. And the problem with a lot of business leaders is they don't, well, finance teams mostly, financial teams, they just don't really understand where these hidden costs are, so they're not able to value that. So they go, well, look, this computer's working, the person's using it. I don't care that it's really slow because we don't have that cost, so we're saving money. But if that person leaves through frustration and you have to employ somebody else, that's vastly more expensive than if you've just given them a new laptop for a few £100s. Okay, next way that we want to cut IT costs, and this may be a bit confusing, is called controlling shadow IT. What is shadow IT? Well, that's where some person outside the IT department has bought something without consulting with IT. What that means is one of two things. Either their IT support is just a naysaying, says no, 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 or more likely they just haven't bothered to talk to IT. We say this all the time. I've seen companies buy phone systems, database systems, they don't bother speaking to IT, and then unsurprisingly, there's loads and loads of problems. Guess who gets the blame? IT. And they say, well, why doesn't it work? It works with other systems. It works in my house. It's just like, if you bothered to engage the people that you're paying, your experts that you're paying, they would have helped advise you. That's what you're paying for. If that's a big problem in your organization, do come and pick my brains, because I do have some tips on trying to stop it happening to a certain extent. And it's really, really about engaging with people and being supportive and encouraging rather than negative. A lot of IT teams are encouraged to cut costs, but they're not encouraged to explain what the risks are from that cost-cutting exercise. If you don't know what you're doing when it comes to managing IT, you need to have a trusted advisor who's giving you that advice. So yes, you can cut costs, you can sweat the assets, but what are the risks and opportunities from doing that? So you need to have some kind of centralized IT purchasing process. It doesn't have to be complicated. Somebody needs to be in charge of it, especially with all these AI tools coming on now. We're really worried about data governance and data being stolen or lost because people are just uploading it to these systems because there's no controls in place. And this isn't about limiting what people can do, it's about empowering what people can do. And as soon as you start to limit it, you're putting at risk creating more shadow IT. Sweating the assets. Now, there's nothing wrong with that, especially in your economic cycle in the business. You may want to keep your equipment going on for longer, maybe 5 years, 6 years. That's fine, but you do need to plan for that and the things you can do to reduce the risk. For example, if you've got old PCs, especially servers, you can buy extended warranties, not from the manufacturers, but from a third party. I can help with that if you need. And what that will enable you to do is, if there is a problem with this key server that you've got in your business because you've kept it for 7 years, we can get somebody to come out of you today and fix it when it breaks. Not for 20 years, but what we can do is make sure that that's less of a risk to the business. Or if you've got a really old business system, say you're a manufacturing company and you've got a system that runs on, I don't know, Windows XP or something. First of all, get it off the internet. But secondly, we can have a spare machine that's already and set up, ready to go. So when it does die, we can just plug that in instead. So all I'm saying here is that understand what you're doing. By sweating your assets, yes, you're cutting costs in the short term, but you're increasing your risks. And when it comes to cybersecurity, as I mentioned before, that is a significant risk. It has to be supported or isolated. Automation. Now, automation is a great way of cutting costs, but it takes a bit of time. So what I always advise is find the quick wins first and make sure that when you're doing any automation, you're looking at whether it's a digital transformation or just a transference. So what sometimes people do is they buy loads of different tools, they try and get them all to work together, and they do that to automate their systems, where actually it might have been cheaper to buy a bigger tool that does everything. And what's definitely not cheaper is to create it yourself. So if you're one of these Excel spreadsheets companies, think about what tools exist in the market for your industry that could eliminate those Excel documents, because that's not an efficient way of working. Artificial intelligence is coming in now. You may think, well, that's going to automate things even quicker. Well, what it might do is create lots more mistakes in your business. So you need to make sure you've got the checks and measures in place. So my advice there is automate wisely. A lot of businesses really struggle with sales and marketing and finance and linking the three together. So really, the tools that you use need to take people that are interested in your marketing, take them into sales, take them through the finance process, and without having to rekey any information. And if you've not got that in place, there are loads of tools and techniques that you can put in place to make sure that the data flows so you don't have to rekey it all. I know that seems obvious, but what often happens is it becomes a too difficult problem. So you need to pick one element and get that implemented. And again, as I said before, maybe you need to change the tools that you're using, find a simple, effective tool that will enable you to quickly migrate a system to something that somebody else has written that works really well for very similar businesses to yours. So to future-proof your business, we need to plan the transitions, plan the digital transformations, look at what's happening with AI. I've done loads of videos on this, but you need somebody in charge of AI. Look at the big picture. You can sweat your assets, which is great, and that will cut your costs in the short term, but you need to understand the risk. And most importantly of all, you need to control the cyber risks. So whatever you're doing with the business opportunities and risks when it comes to technology, make sure your business strategy and your IT strategy is aligned and your business management team understand the risks and the opportunities that technology provides and can articulate them. That does not need you to be technical, but you need to be able to understand what the risks are of each decision you make. And if you're not getting that from your IT, feel free to reach out with me, book a call, quite happy to have a quick chat, and I can explain to you what you can do to understand the risks and the opportunities. I've also got lots of cheat sheets you can download to help you ask those questions from your IT team. Hope that makes sense. Let me know what you think. I'd love to talk to you. Thanks very much for watching.